My name is Sean. Yeah,
Sean.
no, that was a good game.
Yeah. No, this may be exactly what we need is a little bit of sobriety here.
I do typically like to enjoy my Sundays nice and sober so I can fully witness the sadness that is normally the Lions.
Oh, do you have a dungeon?
Yeah.
I just
No,
curious
no.
question. Casual
Timed locks on the
conversation.
doors. Yeah.
Locks on the outside of the door.
Yeah. But I did want to call out something is if you look at kind of the stats of Stafford over those 3 games, you see kind of a marked improvement in terms of how he's performing. If you look like at his QBR stats, he goes from a 77 to a 91 to 119. And, you know, when a quarterback is scoring over 100, that's normally pretty positive view of kind of how their play was. And I kind of feel like a lot of people have been pretty negative on his overall play. And I think, you know, he had a couple hard throws where he was definitely putting a little bit too much juice in the end zone.
Yeah.
And we definitely could have gotten those. But, you know, outside of kind of a couple give me plays, which probably are give me for just Stafford and a few other quarterbacks, but almost nobody else, I actually thought he played relatively decent. Like, this was within the realm of Stafford's here. He's a good quarterback. He's going to make an occasional mistake, but he actually did a pretty darn good job.
Yeah. I'll tell you one thing about Matthew Stafford. The arm strength is still there. Did you see him break Buda
Yes.
Baker's other hand?
Yes, that was the other thing I was going to say. Yes, exactly. And that was perfect. Is that throw, and as soon as I saw him going on the sidelines and like with his hand and everything, I was just cheering. Like, I was just like, you need to be punished. If you're going to stop that pass, there's the punishment.
Yeah.
All right.
Calvin Johnson will show you the hands to show you
Yeah,
don't
it's
ever get
all,
in the
you
way
know.
of one of those.
Bent fingers.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, but I agree to an extent that Stafford, to me, hasn't looked like a problem per se. You know, we've had a couple sacks that probably shouldn't have been taken, or, you know, there's arguments for those. You know, that bad interception that he threw. But I think this is also the first game where Stafford didn't need to be the guy to bring us back from the brink. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The first 2 games, and this has been a problem for Stafford his entire career. And part of it is that he was leaned on so heavily his first couple years here that, you know, I think it's probably ingrained in him at this point. But he doesn't need to be a savior anymore, or he shouldn't have to be a savior anymore. And when we have games where that's obvious, I think that's when we start to see him, you know, be a little bit better. You know, we saw the last drive of the game. There was a couple very Lions-y opportunities, right, where he throws a 58-yarder, gets called back by a holding. That's the kind of play that in the past, that's a killer. That drive's over. Doesn't matter what happens after that. But Stafford stayed calm. He made the passes he needed to make to Marvin Jones. Marvin broke a tackle, took us out of the hole. And, you know, I think that that's undervalued, a quarterback that can do that. And, you know, we have a quarterback that can do that, and we should be thankful.
You make a great point, as always, Sandman. That's why I love you so much. Matthew Stafford, well, despite you know the knocks that he's taken in this show and whatever for the last couple of weeks, in this game he did what Kyler Murray couldn't. He took the team down to score what was needed to win the game, and Kyler Murray couldn't do that at the end of the game. And it wasn't the crazy Matthew Stafford heroics, you know, quote unquote garbage time wins, anything like that. This was he confidently took the team down. He faced adversity with the hold call, the callback, and he took the team down to a position where they could win the game. And there's a lot to be said for a guy who can do that, and it's an absolute NFL quarterback trait. And we burned a lot of clock. We managed the clock so well doing that. I was just, again, team game, but he stood in there and he did what Kyler Murray couldn't do at that end of that game, and deserves a heck of a lot of credit for being able to do that.
Absolutely. Well, and you know, I also really liked the time management. This was one of the few games where I'm actually like really watching and loving what I'm seeing, right? Like so many times I feel like we're calling the timeout with there's like 2 minutes and 40 seconds, or I feel like, and we're like, hey, let's call a timeout. It's like, no, we can get down the field in 30 seconds. We don't need to save clock at 2 minutes and 40. And they actually ran it down, I think, until a minute was left on the clock. And I really appreciated kind of that. And then the one other thing that I wanted to call out, and I feel like he's kind of been getting a pass, and, you know, he had a couple breakout plays each of the games, but just that is Marvin Jones. Like, Marvin Jones has almost been completely silent these 3 games. Like, he's get one good pass that saves a drive, and that's it. And I don't want to put all of the woes of Stafford onto a single player like that, but if we didn't have Kenny Golladay, and if Marvin is, I don't know, is he 80% of what he used to be last season? It just feels like he's lost a little bit of a step. That if you don't have a target to throw to, it's kind of hard to be a quarterback in the NFL. And I honestly feel like Marvin Jones and Kenny Golladay would be 2s on most other teams. That maybe has a negative viewpoint on our wide receiver and maybe too much on Stafford, but I actually kind of think that they wouldn't be the number 1 on any other team outside of Aaron Rodgers, Matthew Stafford, top 10 to top 5 quarterback.
I will tell you, you're exactly right. And I'm going to refer to the Patriots game today because that's what we do in Lions Land right now with Quinn and Patricia. Who's Harry and who's the other guy, right? They're wide receivers, except Edelman, right? I mean, that's their wide receiver. The other guys, if they can catch it, great. It's an interesting approach to the game, and I feel like, for Matthew, having a Calvin type of receiver changes this whole offense. Golladay looks spectacular out there, right? He did exactly what, and even Jesse James had a great game today for Jesse James, right? He looked good out there. Amendola early had a nice catch. Swift, if he could flex those shoulder blades a little more, he could have caught that ball. But mostly catching the ball was great. But you're right, Marvin Jones has been silent, and I don't know if that's because they were shutting him down. Peterson was on him. I don't know exactly what was going on. We'll have to watch that as the games go on. But it was definitely Golladay that was the guy that, if they didn't bracket him in the crossing route, he was open and he was getting the ball.
Well,
Absolutely.
and, Stafford needs a safety blanket. He's a quarterback that needs that. And I think that when he was drafted by Mayhew, they knew that, and that's why they took Brandon Pettigrew so soon thereafter.
Yep.
When you have a Calvin Johnson, that's a permanent safety blanket while he's on the field. I think Golladay is similar, that Stafford knows that he can kind of toss a few up if he needs to in a pinch. Someone's bearing down on him, he just kind of toss it over, and Golladay will make something happen.
Yep.
But we were hoping that that Hawkinson would be able to do that, that Swift might be able to do that. But so far, I kind of agree that he hasn't really had a safety blanket, and Marvin Jones is doing what Marvin Jones does, which is disappear when he is not facing the number 2 corner.
Yep.
He'll get his scheme opened, but he really doesn't get separation. And when you're Matthew Stafford and you're trying to make a quick decision, the guy that's got a guy right on his back is generally not the choice.
I'll tell you one other thing that affected the play calling today was, and likely how they used Marvin Jones as well. You didn't see Kenny Golladay doing a whole lot of verticals. There was a whole boatload of crossing routes. I have a feeling they were being a little extra careful on that hammy and not using full Kenny Golladay out there. God, I can't speak. And Marvin Jones was taking a little bit of that. And that's why he was covered, because he just doesn't do well in that role, right? That's not how he plays well. So it may be a little bit of getting Kenny back into full strength and healthy and doing his thing. So again, if we can do this with Kenny, with a fully healthy Kenny going vertical, that changes the game up. We may see more from Marvin in that case, and still have a Kenny that's getting some long balls. So this offense still has things to reveal, I think.
Yep, and
Absolutely.
long balls open everything up. They open up screens, they open up run game, they open up tight ends. It's definitely been missed the first 2 weeks.